Hello and welcome to the Be Glad movement. My name's Pollyanna and I'm on a mission to bring you as many stories as possible of good coming out of bad and reasons to be glad. And today I'm joined by Shaun. Say hello, Shaun.
Hello everybody, it's really nice to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Very
Shaun,
welcome.
your story is obviously one of good coming out of bad, and I'm going to let you start at the beginning and just dive straight in and tell us all about it. So you fire away.
Okay, my story, I always call it From Darkness to Light, and there's a reason behind that. I'm going to go right back to where life started with me, and I'm a soldier's child. I was born in the military back in the good old days, in a military hospital. I went to schools all over the world. I had the most amazing childhood. I went to schools in Malta and Cyprus and Germany, and it was life fantastic. And then, of course, when my father came back to the UK back in the late 70s, and I'm finishing off school around about that time, or into the early 80s, there was always going to be one vocation for me, and I was going to join the British Army. No disrespect to where my father lived, but I wanted to go back and replicate that fab life that I'd been living as a kid, and I did. And I very excitedly joined the military back in late 1983. No guesses for how old I am. But, everybody in my family did that. My eldest brother had gone off to join the Royal Engineers. He went down to the Falklands. My younger brother, a year younger before me, had joined and gone to the Falklands also. So I had to go and join the lads and join the military, and I did. And back in 1983, I went to Woolwich in southeast London and to the home of the Royal Regiment of Artillery. And my journey started. And it literally started with a bang. And how do I mean that? If we can remember back then, a lot of us, the IRA, were on a bombing campaign through the UK. I remember, a lot of us still remember Hyde Park bombing, that atrocity, Harrods bombings and stuff like that. And the Harrods bombing actually happened 7 days after a bomb went off at my barracks. And that was the first realization as a young kid back in the day. It was on. There was somebody out there trying to kill, and as a soldier, that now included me.
Sure.
But we had to make light of that, as young soldiers did. I remember that Saturday morning. It was about 15 days before Christmas, and we were out sweeping the barracks. We were looking for a secondary device. Well, as young soldiers, recruits, sprogs, whatever you want to call us, we didn't even know what a first one looked like. So we were out there sweeping away, and that was my first welcome to the British Army. It was on. I'm a real soldier now, and to expect. So I think from that moment, if there was an imaginary switch on any soldier, mine's gone on. And it's this, and I mention this because it's the best way to explain how we have this switch. It reminds me as a kid, Action Man, with that little switch on the back of his head, eagle eyes and stuff like that. So I kind of, I do a lot of talking on the black tie circuit about my experience, and I kind of explain that, but we'll get to that point. So I joined the military and I went to West Germany, had the most amazing time. And then in 1985-86, I went to West Belfast, and I joined for a short time the Royal Green Jackets. And that's when it was a huge awakening for me. And I have to go back to remind people, a lot of us in the UK were had Irish family in our bloodline.
Right.
My father came from the Northwest, very, very rich in Catholic, Irish Catholic immigration. My nana, I remember her telling tales when we were kids about good old Ireland. But I also remember, as a young teenager, her having some words about why we're going to Northern Ireland, killing our own, and I never understood what she meant by that. And I would say, killing your own now, what are you talking about? I'm a British soldier, I'm born in Britain. You're Irish, I'm proud of that tiny trait of Irish blood in me, but I'm a soldier. So I remember her saying that. And when I was in West Belfast in a cemetery one day with a rifle, taking a fire position, I was reading the crosses, the insignia on the crosses, which were Catholic. I mean, of course they are. I mean, a Christian cemetery. But then I started to think, what's this all about? Whose side am I on? Am I Irish Catholic now, or I'm a soldier? And there's a bit of a struggle with inside, which I kept very, very, very close into my chest, if you will.
Right.
But so I guess if there was a start of a frag, and when we say frag, a bit of something going on upstairs, that struggle had already began with me, because you love your family, you'll do whatever your family say, and if your grandma says that's what's life, that's where you're brought up. So I served 2 tours of Northern Ireland as a young soldier. When I came back of my second tour of duty in 1987, I was then posted to London, where I quickly had to learn to ride a horse. So I was literally back from Northern Ireland, a very, very busy tour, into the UK. You didn't have time to decommission. You had your tours of duty, you came back in, you handed in your weapon, and then you went on to your next task and as a soldier. So I went to London and I joined the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery for 3-year posting. And I still didn't have time to decommission. I was literally rifle in, horse out, right, what do I do next?
Sure.
So that was my time. And I had a crush injury, and I was really disappointed. I had a crush injury on the guns as well, the ceremonial guns. And because of that crush injury, I missed the first Gulf War when that came out because I was medically downgraded. I actually lost, I had lots of operations, but I lost quite a part of that hand there. And I guess that's when the army was saying, look, mate, you're medically downgraded. We're getting rid of the sick, lame and lazy, if that's the word. We're culling the army. You might want to think about leaving. You're not going to get promoted any further. It's time for you to get out. And I'd signed for 22 years, so I was probably now at the 12-year point.
Right.
So I thought, well, okay, I can't go on tours of duty. I can't get promoted anymore. I don't want to be stuck in camp. No disrespect to those who are. We all do a great job. But I wanted to be with the lads on the front line. And if I couldn't do that, it was time to leave the line, time to leave the military. So I did. And I remember that day, 31st of October, the minute the clock chimed, I suddenly had this realization that I was no longer under the Crown protection anymore. I was now a civvy, and I thought, now what on earth do I do as a civvy? I didn't think it would be, but I didn't think it was going to be that difficult. I was very lucky. I had a friend of mine who'd left the army a few years before me, so I started working in a financial training company. But my friend Chris left, and then suddenly I was on my own, and I had lots of people around me, my new civvy friends. But this, and I mean this with the greatest respect, I couldn't communicate. Not because we didn't speak English. I mean, I couldn't, my jokes didn't resonate with theirs.
Right.
I didn't get what they were on about. They thought I was a bit odd. I started drinking quite a bit, actually. And I always remember this. We did it all the time in the army. When times were bad, you'd have a drink. When something was amazing, you'd have a drink. Everything was rewarded with alcohol. Not knocking it, I mean, but that's how that life was. And you know, at this point, I'd still do all my time again if I had the opportunity. Yeah, so I started to drinking. Then I started to go within myself. Spent a lot of time in my mind. My mind was taking over my daily life then, and I was finding it incredibly hard to settle into Civvy Street. Couldn't do it. Kept saying it'll be all right tomorrow. Have the other drink, but every day just got worse for me. And I thought I was strange. I thought I was odd because I couldn't have a relationship for more than 5 minutes. What I was finding is I didn't like the emotional attachment. I didn't like when people were getting close. I pushed them back. And I thought everybody did that. But no, people start to say, you're strange, Shaun, what's wrong with you? Every time I get close to you, you put this wall up. And I thought they were being strange. I guess over the years, what I've learnt, if it's worth mentioning now, is if you're in the armed forces and you've been in all your life, I found when I came out, that switch I talked about earlier was still switched on. So I was still ready like this. I was still searching my car every single day, 6 months to a year after leaving the military, for explosives, because again, back to the IRA, they were trying to kill off-duty soldiers. Even though I'm a civvy, I still had that thing programmed in my mind. So that was still very much running with me. And also, I think I gave everything. I had no emotions left. I didn't know how to feel anymore. I remember incidents, whatever happened in Northern Ireland or anywhere, you didn't have to have time for empathy because you couldn't do your job. You had to get on with it. And anything like that, you'll deal with that later on for the rest of your life, as you go back into visitation of what happened in your youth. So this is where I was at. Drinking was now getting out of control. I couldn't connect. Jobs were becoming one after another. And I just wanted, I was getting bitter now. I threw everything I had out of from my military memorabilia. So gutted. Why did I do that? But it's quite common, I'm told. And I just wanted to disassociate with everything that I'd had, my past with the military. So I threw it all out, and then I started to plot, if that's the right word. I started to plot, thinking, life's pretty useless. I ain't connecting. I ain't going to get that back. I get up every day. I have to face the same crap every day. I don't like the job I'm doing. I can't connect with people. They're odd. It's not me. Then the voice starts, Mr. Little Voice inside, starts to tell you that you're useless, and starts taking over. And I started to listen. I listened really hard to that voice, and I spent a lot of time with it. And I always talk about this like our voice being our best friend, isn't it? I mean, because we live with it. We make decisions every day. We laugh in our minds and things. And then, sometimes your mind will tell you things, and I felt it turned against me, telling me that I was useless and pathetic, and what was the point? You couldn't even be a soldier for 12 years. How did you get that injury? What a waste of space. And of course, go and have another drink because you're not worth it, sort of thing. And I really, really deep into myself. And I remember one day thinking, you know what? I ain't doing this anymore. I ain't doing it, man. I'm indexing, a military word for finishing off. I'm out the door. So I started to go into a world that I'd not ever been used to. Because don't forget, I had a great childhood. Life was great. Loved the army. But now I'm playing with fire in my mind. So I started to go on the internet and looking at how do you extinguish yourself? What's the quickest way, the best way? How can I do this? I got really, infatuated by it. And it was around Christmas time, and I was living just outside London. And I went to a party in central London, and I was full of high spirits, but inside, the game was on. Nobody knew what I was planning, but I'd gone to this party and I was laughing and joking. And every few minutes I'd go aside thinking, "Oh, bless, you're not going to see me again tomorrow, mate." And it was giving me more courage, this. How bizarre is that? There's more strength to do what I was going to do. So I went home that night, said goodbye to everybody, went back to my place, and I was living in a small village just outside London. It was a really, really tiny village. Nobody even goes through it after 9 o'clock at night. It's just dead. It's dead in the middle of nowhere. So I knew what I was going to do was really no cry for help. Once I did what I did, the game is on. I ain't going to get found. No one passes. Like I said, no one passes through after 9. So it's about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'd been drinking that night. Don't forget, I'd been to that party, so I'd gone back, had a few more beers, and I got the courage up, and I thought, right, Johnson, let's do this. And I was bizarrely strong with it. I had no fear. I remember thinking, do you know what? I don't have to deal with this crap anymore. I had my faith. I believed that my consciousness or my soul would go on anyway. So I really believed that was going to happen. But you know what? The conviction was there. So I left the house at 3 in the morning. I took a piece of flex from the Hoover. I sat in the car. I attached that to the back, fired it into the back window. listened to some music on the CD, one of my favourite tracks, Child in Time by Deep Purple. That really shows my age. Listened to that, had some reflecting thoughts. I smoked back then, so I had my last fag. And then when I was ready, I just remember thinking, right, okay, if there's something there, let's do this. Let's get it on, man. And I turned the engine, wound the window, and just started to breathe. And then I don't know how long time had lasted, but then there was nothing, just a darkness. But it was like suspended animation, if that's the word. So had I crossed the line? I don't know. But suddenly everything was like chaotic. I don't know how long this has been. And this is how bizarre this is. And we talk about let's be glad, you know. Two girls, never saw them again. We're going to a party. Don't forget, again, Christmas time, so people are out and about doing this stuff. They decided that they wanted to go on somewhere else. One of them lived in the village, and she wanted to go back and get something at whatever time after 3 it was in the morning. And that's when they saw the car. And I was unconscious at that time. So then going back to the suspended animation being broken, I just remember them crying and screaming. And I woke up and I thought, geez, what's going on? And I had to collect my thoughts for a minute. And then I, within the second, realised, no, you can't do this. I'm there, you know. But they were crying, and I saw the flex thrown across the street, and I was pulled out the car. And I was so angry with myself because I failed at that. So they were crying. So the police came. I was taken to a police station. Not arrested like a criminal. I was held for my own safety. Yeah, but I knew I had to finish the job off. So I don't think I've not done this before. I don't know what the procedure is. Don't even know what the hospitals are about for mental health, or if there were any. I had no idea. Anyway, the police had me in a cell, and all I kept thinking, right, as soon as they let me out, I'm going to go into the woods and I'll finish this job off. If I've got to do it that way, I'll do it that way. But I didn't. This couple turned up, elderly couple, and he said, Shaun, do you think you should be in hospital? And I said no. And they said, do you know what section it is? And I said, no idea. And she said, if I section you, and that means I will force you into hospital, potentially that will have a bigger comeback in your life, on your record and stuff. Now, don't forget, I'd been drinking. I didn't understand what she was talking about. I was tired.
Sure.
If you go into hospital voluntarily, then that will save that, but you'll still be held in there, if you will. You can leave, but then we may have to section you back in. And I said, you know what, I'm just tired, get into the hospital. So I went to that hospital in Slough, in Wexham Park, I think it's called. I was there for about 10 weeks. A lot of medication, a lot of thoughts, a lot of anger, a lot of tears, but it hadn't finished for me. I lied my way out. I sat on the board, all those doctors, and it was, what am I going to do and all this? And I've got support, and I was quite clever how I lied my way out of it. Got out. Within 2 days, they gave me, which I'm banned from having now, sleeping tablets. I had loads of sleeping tablets. Went home. Everybody, oh, Shaun, why did you do that? You know, we love you and all this stuff. And I still think, no, I'm finishing the job off. And again, I had to put this facade on that I was well, and I repented for what I'd done. But I did know one thing, though, before I went to try it the second time, how much it affects people. That's one thing we've got to be, whatever we do in life, and everybody's watching. And I do a lot of work now with people who are close to this. It doesn't end with you. If you do this, it will strike the heart of all those around you. And I really mean that, because I saw how it was affecting people, even though my mind was foggy. But it really, really will. So yeah, what I did is I took a huge overdose, dropped the lot. And I just wanted to say, hear one person's voice one last time. And you know what? If you've ever taken sleeping tablets, they're pretty fast. They work pretty quick. But you can hold a sentence for a short while, then you just kind of zonk out. You take about 20 of them, it's like knocking an elephant out. and you're gone in seconds. So I'd made a mistake by picking up that phone. And is that the right word, a mistake? I picked up the phone to speak to somebody, probably said a few words, flat out, gone.
Right.
I don't remember anything else now for 3 days. And I believe I was taken to another hospital where I was worked on for 3 days. I remember when I came round, the pressure on my chest with bruising and stuff, pretty. God knows what they did. And you know what? This is where life turned around for me, because the fact that I'd failed again, it was a doctor, and he said to me, he said, Shaun, he said, and he's looking through the notes. He said, I don't know what you've done, kid. He said, but I think somebody's looking down on you, because by all of accounts of what you've done twice, you should be dead by now. And I would take that as maybe you've got maybe there's a reason for you. If that's sort of, and I thought, when I had a lot of time to myself, you get to think even further, but more clearly. So I did start to think, what's life about? Do I have a purpose? I've got my spiritual belief. But yeah, why didn't it work for me? I couldn't have tried any harder. So then that's when I had to start turning my life around. And my father passed away about that time. That was kind of a shock for me, a shocker. And I thought, I got to start fighting back, man. I got to start boxing out of this box and making it what's left of life. My wife came on the scene. Now, don't forget, before I had many girlfriends where they didn't last 5 minutes. I couldn't have that relationship, and she went through all the crap. And I was very, very lucky, because if you haven't got a good person by your side, your journey can be quite dangerous. So yeah, she stood by me, and together we started to negate our way through life. We moved here into this fabulous flat we've got now in central London, and she made me face up to things. And one of them was that I had a problem, and I needed to speak to somebody about the past. And we did, and I went to my GP, and they thought, right, I think we probably need to. You haven't transited right from the military. You need to go to combat stress. So I did. I went to combat stress, started to face up to the reality of stuff, and then while I was at combat stress, the funny thing is, and I never wanted to talk about my experiences other than a medical professional. I started getting to the arts, and you mentioned good old William behind me. Can you still see him there?
I can, yeah.
Yeah. I was working with a few veterans, and an American woman. She wanted to do some work with military veterans and theatre of all things. And Shakespeare, good God, Shakespeare, couldn't stand it. I hated it. If you look further behind me, I've got the whole reams of his works, or the whole works of Shakespeare.
Wow.
So we got together, and I thought, I've been living a pretty solitary life, but I was connecting with other veterans now. So I was kind of back within my own family again, if you will. I felt we started doing this Shakespeare stuff, and the first thing we did was Midsummer Night's Dream. Now, don't forget, I knew nothing about it, but it was funny. There was fun doing it, and we were a whole male cast. And I'll never forget it, because we thought, let's put this play on. We thought, and we used the women, Hermia and Helena, these big butchy type, plumpy military veterans. Worked, and we were having a riot. But it was only supposed to be a social experiment to last 6 months. And we didn't realise the power that the arts and the healing was bringing. So we formed into a theatre company, and very, very quickly in the early days, we were given a residency at the. First and foremost, the play was supposed to be like put on in a church hall or something, and wasn't it great and wonderful, and clap the boys off. No, it was bigger than that. We were realising that there's a lot of power to this, a lot of connection. The guys were coming out of their shells and embracing the arts, and finding a new way of life again. Thought, well, if we can do that through the arts, then we want to show it we want to put this on a bigger table, and we did. And Kevin Spacey was at the Old Vic at the time, and he had Hamish Jenkins, I think it was called, was his assistant director, who'd opened up the old tunnels. So they decided that we could have a 3-year residency down there, and we opened our first play in 2012.
Wow.
Shakespeare, all things. So that's where things started to turn around for me, and my life was starting to move back on track. But I kept thinking back to what I did in the past, and could I still talk about it? But I probably still wasn't ready, or even had that thought I was going to share my story with anybody, because I was still under the thinking it's a cowardly thing to talk about. If mental health is supposed to be like locked away, you don't tell people stuff about mental health because they think you're odd and strange, you know. Where it's no different today than any other type of disease, is it really? It's a problem that it's as normal as anything else. I.e., we shouldn't be thinking it's so separate to everything else, because it's not.
Sure.
Mental health, you know, on par with everything else, and we should be free to talk about it and acknowledge it and treat it and share amongst ourselves the best way to fight back. So yeah, I was now fighting back in great spirit. Unbeknown to me, I was really enjoying the arts, loving Shakespeare. I mean, man, what a genius. If you can teach a squaddy, a few squaddies to read his works, put it on, not only just read it, really get it. You know, that Shakespeare's hard at the best of times, but if you can play with it and think, man, it's taken over my life, I love it, man. Take it back from the people, give it to the people. So I started to move into the arts then, and very, very luckily for me, and fortunately for me, the Royal Shakespeare Company got involved. We were being trained by some of the best practitioners in the world, best voice coaches. They were throwing everything at it for nothing. And so a lot of us went into our different routines or our different areas, but I kept on the trail with Shakespeare. And over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been very, very fortunate. I performed Hamlet at the Globe. I performed in the West End as Malvolio in 12th Night. I played Richard III at the RSC Swan Theatre and the West End.
Wow.
It's an amazing journey. But the thing is, and I'm currently now about to appear in the West End with a fabulous production called Soldier On, written by Johnny Guy Lewis, which we had a fantastic UK tour earlier this year. So we're about to open up at the Other Palace Theatre for 5-6 weeks, starting in this October. I've performed in America, in Washington, D.C., at the Landsberg Theatre. So it's been fantastic, but that's all nice and good. But the thing about it, I'm very grounded by this. It sounds all nice and fluffy, but I still do it, not because it's fab to act. I'd like to be detracted from who I am. I'm not healed fully. I still acknowledge that I'm struggling through life, but I'm a lot better. And theatre therapy, as I call it, helps me get through life. So when I go on stage, I don't have to be me. I can just let go of the ghost of the past and be something completely different. And that's why I like it. Not because it's the acting. It gives me an escape route. Why am I glad? I'll tell you why. I talk about what's going on now, Polly. I do a lot of work on the circuit. I spoke to 50 people, to 1,000 people at black tie dinners. And what am I talking about? I'm just saying, look, we're in this together. It doesn't matter if you've been in the military or not. If you're a civilian, we're all beautiful souls, you know. And there's a purpose for every one of us. The good God gave us all amazing purpose in life. We just got to find that strength together. And if we can't do it singularly, you know, we can do it as a team together. And I think that's the message I like to get across. Nobody has to sit in darkness. I did that. I sat in the dark. I pulled the trigger. It didn't work for me, and I don't want it to work for anybody else as well. So I just want to say to people, if you're struggling today, please don't take it any further than go to get some support, because there is light. And I mean this when I say by this, there is light at the end of the tunnel. If I can do it, and a bit of Shakespeare, then we can all do it. If you get a moment as well, look at my link, How the Stage Saved a Soldier. I worked with a young lad from the National Theatre, Jamie Isbell. I was talking about it. There's a lot more about it on there, but that, Polly, is my story, my darling. And that's where I am today. Doing a lot of work. I do a lot of work today, kid, constantly thinking how to help somebody else and what can we do next.
It's a wonderful story, Shaun. Thank you so much for sharing it. I just really, really do appreciate it, because I imagine it must be quite hard to go back to those dark times and tell us about it. So, you know, I really appreciate you doing that for us. And I'm sure there's going to be people watching this that are maybe in that dark time at the moment. And I mean, I quite often say towards the end, what would your advice be to someone going through that at the moment? But you've already rounded that up so beautifully. And I'm so glad that, you know, your wife came into your life, and that you got to, and those words from that doctor saying, well, look, you've tried twice, you know, maybe there's a reason for you to be here, and you seeking help as well, because I think one of the biggest messages at the moment is it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to not look for help, you know. And if you can reach out, and if you hadn't ended up at combat stress, then you might not have found that the theatre lady who brought you to Shakespeare. And wow, I'm so glad that you are loving Shakespeare. That's awesome.
I think the more we realise the true potential about what we're about, Polly, you know, I was frightened to talk to anybody, even on the road to recovery. And I look back in life, and I've done a lot of TV, live TV, radio, national press, talking about it candidly. I guess it's fighting back now. No more sitting in the dark, because come on, everybody, like, we just had an amazing summer. Isn't it great when it's sunny, you know? And life can always be like that in our hearts, if we if we can't do that journey, just let some people guide you to the line, and you can cross it yourself. And I promise the guys and girls who get to that line, life really is beautiful at the other side. There you go.
Fantastic. That's a beautiful message. Thank you so much. I'll just round up the video. So if you like this video, please do hit the like and subscribe button, and you'll get notifications when new videos are posted. If you've got a story to share, please do get in touch, even if it's something similar to what somebody else has shared, because I really do believe that your story and your voice has the power to touch someone when they're in need. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram if you search @BeGladMovement. And I will look forward to seeing you in another episode. Many thanks.